Hello my friends, I'm Rich Larson and I'm the IRC Tire Guy. Today we'll be breaking down a technique that at first glance seems like just a cool trick. But as we go deeper, we realize its extreme real-world hard enduro use. Today we'll be breaking down the static stuff and smash. So when you see the full static stuff and smash or zap over an obstacle, especially to an amateur rider, it looks almost unattainable. This is a technique that, when properly performed, requires a dialed static balance, flywheel loading, throttle and clutch control, and a serious focus on body position. There's a lot to master before getting to this level, but in practicing this technique, I had a realization of how often I use a variation of this exact technique in my everyday hard enduro riding. A variation that doesn't require quite as much balance or mastery of body position, but a variation that I believe every rider should be using when getting stuck in those technical situations. So today we'll break down both the variation and the advanced technique so you can apply it to your hard enduro rides. The static stuff is used all the time in trials competition. This is a great maneuver to use when there's really no run up to the obstacle you're attempting. If you have a trials bike, I recommend learning it on the lighter machine. It will be a lot easier, but it's okay if you don't. Basically, the stuff maneuver is when you run your front tire into the face of the obstacle and keep it there. You're stuffing the front tire into the obstacle, then adjusting your body position back, loading the flywheel, and releasing the clutch while exploding forward and over the obstacle. I practice these all the time on the big bike and the trials bike because I know it transfers directly to my hard enduro riding. It's so often I see guys attempt to make a log, a boulder, a cliff, or even a hill climb. When they don't make it, they move their body weight forward and push the bike with muscle, wasting so much energy and usually a lot of time. Using this stuff technique or a variation of the stuff technique, the rider can explode forward over any obstacle with very little energy. So we'll start with breaking down the advanced technique and add in the variations as we go. You want to practice this maneuver on a stable obstacle. You don't want whatever you're trying to balance on moving. It's hard enough as it is. Also, a stable obstacle will help compress that suspension and help you explode forward over whatever it is you're riding. Obviously, you're going to want to start smaller. A nice log or small boulder will do. Approach the obstacle slow and balanced, focusing on being as centered as possible. Using a soft blip and slip of the clutch and throttle, lift the front tire, stuffing it 3/4 of the way up the obstacle. As soon as the front tire makes contact with the obstacle, I'm applying both front and rear brakes to hold the bike in one place. This also helps keep that suspension compressed, keeping your center of gravity lower and thus making it easier to balance. Now, when learning this technique, it's not necessary to immediately focus on no dabs. You can place the tire on the obstacle with one foot on the ground for balance. This is the exact variation I use hundreds of times when I'm out riding hard enduro. One foot on the ground, then I explode forward over the obstacle. It's not necessary to do it no dabs in hard enduro situations. I prefer to have my left foot down so I can still use my right foot on the rear brake to keep me from rolling back. In both the variation and the no dabs technique, I then focus on slightly slipping out the clutch and keeping my front brake in to allow the bike to push even harder into the obstacle. This then lets me release the rear brake and transition to the balls of my feet on the foot pegs. In both the no dabs technique and the variation with one foot on the ground, this is when I transition my body weight back over the rear tire to prepare for the explosion forward over the obstacle. Understanding when there's no run up or room to gain momentum before you go over the obstacle, your bike automatically wants to wheelie over. Starting with your body weight back allows you to transition your body weight forward to counteract that wheelie. The higher the obstacle, the more aggressive that weight transition forward needs to be. As your weight is back over the rear tire, this is when you begin to increase your RPMs or load the flywheel for that extra propulsion over the obstacle. The next step is a lot about timing. I'm exploding forward at about the same time I'm releasing my clutch completely. I'm pushing down through the pegs, but keeping my body weight low and close to the seat. Even in the variation of the technique with one foot off the pegs, notice I quickly transfer both feet onto the pegs and explode forward while releasing the clutch. Both techniques are very similar. As I explode forward, I'm pushing down through the pegs and trying to get above the bike. I use both legs and arms while exploding forward. I'm trying to counteract that feeling of wheeling over. Then as my rear tire hits the obstacle, I transition back over the rear tire to hold traction. Very simply, this is cutting the first blip and momentum out of the double blip. This is a challenging technique, but learning it and practicing it can absolutely transfer into your hard enduro riding. I use a variation of this technique every time I ride. Once you learn it, it's guaranteed to work. If you're enjoying the breakdowns on the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as well as follow us on Instagram at IRC Moto and my personal Instagram page at RichLarson511. And until next time, keep shredding.